So hello and welcome. And now we will start with part B for the CRI new syllabus and part C for the CRI old syllabus, that is the insolvency laws. Now, as far as the insolvency laws are concerned, so broadly you have four laws. Right now there is only three, but broadly there are four laws, okay, which is relevant in your history of insolvency law. Okay. First, you need to understand how the insolvency law got evolved. So any law, how does it get evolved? And don't mind if my voice is little weird because I'm wearing a mask and I'm taking the lecture. So my voice may be a little, I don't know what to say. It will not be the usual sound. Okay. So don't mind with that part. There is nothing wrong with your headphone or the audio of this video. It's the mic, the mask that I'm wearing. Because of that, the voice may be a little different, right? So if I just want to know, how does a law change? How do you see a change in law? Why the laws change? Why do we have changes in the law? Why we had 1956 Act got repealed and we had 2013 Act? Just a basic question.
Many laws are many provisions are uh,
Irrelevant
Sir, for
irrelevant. So
flexibility,
or flexibility? Okay.
yes,
flexibility for
Okay. What else?
due to changes in the current scenarios.
Okay. Due to the changes in the current scenario. All right. So this is one point that I can write here, that there are changes in the current scenario. Okay. What else? What else? What are the other reasons why a law changes? So new laws should be taken into consider, new changes. Okay, to simplify, yes, Sridevi ji, we say to simplify, though it's not applicable on GST law, right? But yes, to simplify the procedure, this is also correct. Then can I say that this is to tap the loopholes?
yes,
So there are certain changes, there are problems, and then those problems are being taken care with the changes in the law. So broadly, if you see the history of the insolvency law, if we discuss about the history of insolvency law, first and major act, if you see, it was SICA, Sikh Industrial Companies Act 1985. So this was one act which was there, right? So earlier we had SICA Act. There are other laws as well. We will be talking about those also, but I'm talking from the corporate perspective. Okay, we have Companies Act in the 1956 edition of the Companies Act covered with the insolvency. The 2013 also covers with the insolvency. However, those provisions never got implemented, right? They were never notified. So just if you know that there are certain laws which are there which deals with insolvency and I'm not covering it here, have patience. I will be taking care of all, but I'm just discussing this all provision in a particular context. Okay, so we have SICA 1985. Now SICA 1985 was one law which covered only the industrial undertakings. Okay, so this was for the industrial undertakings. And what was the objective of this law? The objective of this law
To
was,
revive,
yes, it was for the
revive
revival,
sick company.
revival of the sick companies, all those companies which have become sick. And what do you become? What do you say that? How do you become sick? It becomes sick. A company will become sick. Okay, if first and foremost it's an industrial undertaking, and secondly, this company has eroded its net worth. If you have eroded your net worth, only then you will be allowed. So this is there. There was a regulator here named BIFER, and there was appellate authority also, which is called as IFER. Right. So Board of Industrial and Financial Reconstruction, then appellate authority for industrial and financial reconstruction. So this was there. Now the problem with this law was, so this is the law so far as looks good. Now the problem of this law was it covered only the industrial undertakings. So far as 1985 is concerned, this is pre-liberalization, privatization and globalization era. So it was absolutely fine. But then the other sectors also started growing and started contributing to the economy. Now the problem with SICA was it covered only sick industrial undertaking, because if you have to become an sick company, only then BIFER will have a recourse for you. And to have a recourse from BIFER, you need to be a industrial undertaking. So I hope you understand why SICA was not that great, correct? Do you understand? So today,
Yes, sir.
if you have any non-industrial undertaking which needs to be revived, right? SICA will not take care of that. Also, the problem with this act was it used to wait till the net worth is eroded. Until and unless the net worth is not eroded, you are not a sick company. And in that case, you cannot take recourse from the BIFER. So quite often after eroding the net worth, it was too late. So it's like the symptom of COVID starts with, let's presume, starts with a sneeze and mild fever. So if you can cure that at that level only, it is good. But if you wait till the time it affects your other organs and all, and then you would want to take the medical assistance, then probably it's too late. Quite possible the patient may not be able to revive. So this was again the issue with the sick industrial. Now do you understand? This law is no longer applicable now. Now this is repealed. This law is repealed. Do you understand now why it is there? So earlier you had a chapter for this, but now it's no longer there. Now do you understand why? So SICA was repealed. Now if you see, after this, liberalization, privatization and globalization happened, and we saw the second law which came for insolvency, and that second law was recovery of debt due to the Banks and Financial Institutions Act 1993. Now just see this act also. By the way, this act is still there. The name of this act is also changed now, but just understand what this act was all about. So I'm talking about from the context when this law was enacted. So government realized that to deal with insolvency in SICA, there was a problem. These two issues were there. But SICA was not repealed. SICA was still taking care of the industrial undertakings. But this bank, this basically was made, as the name suggests, recovery of debt due to the banks and financial institutions. So basically, this act was made for the recovery for banks and the financial institutions. How the banks and financial institutions they can do the recovery. The objective was for that. And for this, government went to banks and the financial institutions and asked them, what is it that you need? What is it that you face problem when you go for your recovery? So banks said that the judiciary system. We have to go through the different laws, courts, right? And thereafter we have, that famous movie dialogue, Tariq pe Tariq, Tariq pe Tariq. There are so many pending cases. So it takes a lot of time. So the judiciary system, and it used to take a lot of time. So the time that was taken was too long. So government said that, okay, we can tap this issue. Let's do one thing. Let's make a special court. So under this act, a special tribunal was set up, which was named as Debt Recovery Tribunal, right? And then you have Debt Recovery Appellate Tribunal, and from here you can go to Supreme Court. So Supreme Court was not set up in this. Supreme Court was there in your Constitution of India, but this is how it was there. So this law was made that you don't need to go to the civil court. right? So no civil court. Just see, no civil court. You can straight away go to a
Tribunal.
tribunal, specialized tribunal, debt recovery appellate tribunal, and debt recovery tribunal, and from there your matter can go to Supreme Court. So no need to go to a civil court. So far as this also looks very great, because there was no problem here. Then and this law, again, the DRT, the objective of DRT was, they said that the matter should get resolved within 6 months. But again, there was a problem in this law also because of the long cases, right? Long cases. And when I say long cases, this means it was not getting resolved within 6 months. And then there were too many cases. So again, the problem still remains same for the recovery. It again used to take a lot of time. Thereafter, government planned and they got a new law. And this new law was called as a draconian law, which is Sarfacy.
Sarfazi.
Yes. So this Sarfacy law was made with the objective that again, the banks and the financial institutions, they can do the recovery. Okay. They can do the recovery without the intervention of court. Without the intervention of court, they can do the recovery. Do you understand now this?
Yes, sir.
Sorry. So there were too many cases and the cases were taking too long to get resolved. The law said that it should be expeditiously resolved within 6 months, but it was not taking, it was taking more than 6 months, right? So these cases were taking more than 6 months. And the reason why the delay was there, it was because of too many cases. So government decided that let's make a separate law, okay, in which the banks and the financial institutions, they don't even have to go to the court, and without the intervention of the court, they can do their recovery. Now, so far as this law also looks good, can you see the evolution? This was only for the revival of sick company. Then they say that this was for the banks and financial institutions. A separate tribunal was set up. Then no court intervention. You can straight away go and do the recovery. So when we will study, we'll understand Sarfacy, that how the recovery was done. And there were certain provisions which are mentioned. You comply these provisions and you can do the recovery on your own without the intervention of court. So this looks also great. But again, there were issues in Sarfacy, issues like corruption. The law looks great on paper, and even the provisions of the law is great. It empowers the banks and the financial institutions. But again, corruption was one issue here. Thereafter, political intervention.
And NPA also.
So this was basically to deal with the NPA only. So once you become NPA, the bank will give you a notice, bank and financial institution, they'll give you the notice, and after the notice, they will do the recovery, and the recovery will be done without the intervention of court. And it's a fantastic law. But the problem is its execution. The execution of this law was poor. So poor implementation of the law, corruption, political intervention. So all these things used to happen. Because of this, the NPA crisis continued. And thereafter, we had BLRC. Now, what is BLRC? BLRC is Bankruptcy Legislative Reform Committee. right? So this committee was there, and basically this committee recommended that there should be a new law for insolvency, and that's how we have the Insolvency Bankruptcy Code 2016. So if you see the history of insolvency laws in India, we had SICA that came in the year 1985, SICA 1985. Then we have the Recovery of Debt Due to the Banks and Financial Institutions Act 1993. Thereafter, we had SARFAESI, which was in 2002. And then we have the Insolvency and the Bankruptcy Code 2016. So all these laws were there. And now we will start with, so basically this is now repealed, this law, SICA. SICA is no longer there. This is there, this is there, IBC is of course there. Now even you'll see IBC is also getting evolved. You have some new provisions like pre-packaged resolution, which again you are going to see. That's not part for your June attempt syllabus. For December attempt, this will be there. But I would still say we'll cover in one lecture, we will be covering about pre-packaged insolvency resolution process, so that we at least get to know what's the current affair which is there. And also it will be helpful once you qualify your exams in June also for your interviews and all. Maybe that time it will be helpful for you. And those who are going to give your exam in December, for you all, it will be again relevant here. So we'll start with IBC. We'll start then go to SARFAESI, and then we will do the recovery of debt due to the banks and the financial institutions. Thereafter, we have provisions from the Companies Act and the cross-border insolvency, which we are going to cover it later. So introduction, is this fine? Is this part clear? Right. So now if you see insolvency and bankruptcy code, so if you pick up IBC 2016. Now this IBC 2016, this entire act is divided in for 5 parts. Now the first part deals with the preliminary, right? And this has from section 1 to section 3. Then the second part is the insolvency resolution process and the liquidation of corporate person. Now you don't have to remember the section number and all, but just I'll tell you for your understanding from section 4 till section 77. Now this part is notified. This part is notified, hence this is part of your syllabus also. Then you have third part, which deals with the insolvency resolution process and the bankruptcy for individuals and partnership firms. This starts from section 78 and it goes to section 187. This is still not notified. However, part of it gets notified. I'll tell you how. And we'll be covering this part in basic. Okay. One lecture I'll dedicate it for this. And then this part is again, which is in detail, which is part of your syllabus. Then you have the fourth part of this act, which deals with the registration of information utility, insolvency professional, insolvency professional agency, right? Then topics like inspection, investigation, right? Finance. This part will be there, and this will start from section 188 and this will end at section 223. And then we have the fifth, which is the miscellaneous provision, which starts from section 224, and it ends at 255. So this is your broadly law, which is of 255 sections, though there are more sections to it because in between you have sections like 29A, 10A, now 11A is also there. So that's what I'm saying. 12A. So there are other sections also, but yes, from 1 to section 255, this is the sequence. Now, when I say IBC, Insolvency Bankruptcy Code 2016, just understand this Insolvency Bankruptcy Code caters two types of person. One is the corporate person. So who is a corporate person? Just for your understanding, just see. Part 2 deals with the corporate person and part 3 deals with the individuals and firms. So one it deals with the corporate person, another it deals with the individuals and firms. Now when I say corporate person, in case of corporate person, you have company, you have limited liability partnership, you have other body corporates, you have special companies. So all these things are there, right? So all companies. And then you have the individuals and the firms. That is the partnership firms. Now, as far as the corporate person is concerned, what is going to take place? First, there will be a situation of insolvency. Okay. Now, this insolvency will be tried to resolved. If it is resolved, well and good. If it is not resolved, then the next course of action will be liquidation. Do you understand? Guys, do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
That is why the heading is what? Insolvency resolution process and liquidation of the corporate person. So if the insolvency is not resolved, first of all, when will IBC trigger? IBC will trigger when there will be a situation of insolvency. And if that it is resolved, then you say, yes, it is resolved, then go ahead with the plan. And if it cannot be resolved, then the company will get into liquidation. Similarly for individuals and firms. Again, there will be a situation of insolvency, right? If this insolvency can be resolved, well and good, right? Same situation. If this insolvency can be resolved, it's well and good. If it cannot be resolved, then in that case, you are going to see the bankruptcy proceeding. Now, do you understand why the chapter name is like this? Insolvency resolution process and the bankruptcy for individuals and firms. Okay, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Then again, if I discuss about IBC, there are four pillars in IBC. By the way, this is an exam question also. There are four pillars of IBC. One is the regulator, that is the Insolvency Bankruptcy Board of India. IBBI is the regulator, and then you have information utility, then you have insolvency professional agency, and this insolvency professional agency will govern the insolvency professionals, and they will also jurisdict here. So we'll be discussing about all these things, but I'm just telling you. So IBBI is the newest regulator, right? One of the newest regulator, which is being set up under the Insolvency Bankruptcy Code. So just remember, these are the four pillars of the Insolvency Bankruptcy Board of, basically the Insolvency in the Bankruptcy Code. Also, what IBC has done, IBC has basically consolidated all the laws, consolidated all the laws with respect to insolvency. Okay. Now, when I say for the corporate person, And when I say for the individuals and the firms, just see, there is something called as adjudicating authority. What does it mean? So let's say a corporate person has done a default. Okay, a corporate person has done a default. The corporate person has done an act of insolvency. So where you are going to go, that's the adjudicating authority. So you will go to National Company Law Tribunal, right? And then from National Company Law Tribunal, the case would go to National Company Law Appellate Tribunal, or that is NCLAT. And finally, the matter would go to Supreme Court. Similarly, for individuals and firms, the matter would go to, first it will go to DRT, then the matter would go to DRAT, and at last the matter would go to Supreme Court. Guys, do you understand this part?
Yes.
Right? So this is broad provisions I'm giving you. Before I start with IBC, I'm giving you the broad provisions because what is going to happen when you will read it, you'll be able to understand these terms in what context and where we are going to discuss this, right? Also, when I use this word insolvency and bankruptcy code, so what does the word insolvency mean? And what does the word bankruptcy mean? Or they both are same? Given the fact we just discussed this slide, insolvency and bankruptcy both are same or both are different?
Both are different in different contexts. Corporate person insolvent and individual and firms are bankrupt.
So why I have written here insolvency? Why does the heading says insolvency resolution process for bankrupt for individuals and firms, and then the bankruptcy process for individuals and firms?
When a person insolvent and court uh, give order, uh, then he becomes bankrupt.
Okay, so bankruptcy is a status. Bankruptcy is a
Yes,
status which is given by court.
court. Yes, sir.
Okay, insolvency is a position. It's a financial position, right? It's a financial position. It's a financial situation. You can say this is a financial position or a financial situation where you would say the person, right? Now, when I say person, it includes individuals, firms, and corporate person, everyone, where you say the assets are less as compared to the liabilities. That's where you say you are now a insolvent person. This is a financial position. Not necessary that you have gone to the court or not. Right. So insolvency is a financial position, it's a situation. Bankruptcy is a status which is given by the court. Now tell me, can a company become bankrupt? Can a company become bankrupt? Answer is no. This bankruptcy is a situation which is given to the individuals. So then what about for companies? Companies don't get the status of bankruptcy. They are liquidated. They are bound up. Do you understand? Sorry, I missed the comment section also. Neelam has also answered there. When insolvent person declared by bank become bankruptcy. So Neelam, just replace the word bank with court. Okay, it's the court which declares the person as bankrupt. So these are the two situations with respect to insolvency and bankruptcy. Now, again, if you focus on the chapter number 2 of IBC, IBC chapter number 2. So as I said, it starts from your section number 4 and it ends at section 77. Now it's 77A rather. If I write it this way, it's 77A. Now I'll give you the breakup of this chapter also. So in this, you have part 1. Part 1 is for the preliminary. Okay. Here you have two sections. One is section number 4 and section number 5. Can anyone tell me where we had read about chapter 4, section number 4 before? We have read about section number 4. There was a doubt also which I had taken after the lecture. Reduction of share capital. Remember? When the creditor's name is missed and thereafter a default happens. Default as per section 4 of IBC. Okay, just check. Section 66. Anyway, so this is preliminary. Then you have corporate insolvency resolution process, which is called as CIRP. This starts from section number 6 and it ends at section number 32. Thereafter, we have the third chapter, and this third chapter is for the liquidation process. So, how does it work? So, the corporate insolvency resolution process is being initiated. Now, as I said, if the insolvency could be resolved, well and good. If the insolvency is not resolved, then from section 33, the liquidation start, right? So this is for the liquidation process. And this starts from section 33 and this ends at section 54. Now I'm going to write the next point with a different color because this is a amendment. Now this amendment is not applicable for the June attempt student, but this is very much in news. This is the pre-packaged insolvency resolution process. I don't know how many of you have.
Sir,
Yes,
this is for SMSE, MSME.
yes. So new sections have been inserted. So this is section from 54A till section 54P. I'll clearly write this that this is not applicable for June 2021. So I'll not discuss this during the lecture. I'll discuss about this at the end of the lecture. Okay. Then you have part 4. Now part 4 is the fast track CIRP. So for certain companies, this entire process does not go this long. It is a short process. So we have from section 55 till section 58. Then we have part 5. This deals with the voluntary liquidation. This deals with the voluntary liquidation of the corporate person. Now, what is the difference between the liquidation process in third and fifth? It is here the company is being liquidated after this, right? So after CIRP failed, you have the liquidation process. For this, is CIRP needed? Is CIRP needed for chapter
No,
number
sir.
5? Answer is no.
No.
This is only one section. This is section 59. So how we have the voluntary winding up from the Companies Act, that part is being repealed from the Companies Act and this has been inserted. So when we'll study section 59, I'll tell you which relevant provisions of Companies Act has been repealed because of this one section. Then you have chapter number 6, and this chapter number 6 is the adjudicating authority for the corporate person. All this starts from section number 60 and this ends at section 67A. And then you have chapter number 8, which is offenses and penalties. And the offenses and penalties, this starts from section number 68 and this ends at 77A. What is going to be extremely crucial for you is this part, this part, this part, and this part. So just understand these 4 chapters are going to be extremely crucial for you. For December attempt students, this will also become crucial. But for June attempt students, I think chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, and chapter 5, this will be crucial. Now, as far as the old syllabus students are concerned, for you all, entire IBC is one chapter. Okay. But for the new syllabus students, this entire IBC, as I say, it has been bifurcated into multiple chapters, right? So don't worry. I will still teach you as IBC one chapter only, like how we did as mergers and amalgamation, how we did for the Companies Act. Now, how to read this IBC part? So the entire insolvency part you will be covering through 3 things. One, through the slides where I'll give the explanation. Then we will also have the Where Act, and then you will also get my notes. This is the ebook. We will be covering from these 3. Okay. And at the end, you'll understand from where what to refer. But these are the provisions. So just keep these things in your mind that I have just covered with you all, right? Because all this will get repeated once we study the IBC from the Bare Act. Okay. We'll go word by word. We don't have to do all the sections. We don't have to do all the definitions. However, I have still marked some of the sections. All these are already there in your folder. So you need not worry about that. So let's get started with the Insolvency Bankruptcy Code. This is the most amended act that you have, right? 4th April 2021. Only thing, the amendments of 2021 is not applicable for you all. Earlier, I had planned to get the 23rd September amended act 2020, but the problem was I could not have then covered all those amendments. So just remember, all the amendments of 2021 is not applicable for June attempt. So ignore those amendments, right? Where you will find all these amendments you'll get it here at the end, right? So all your amendments you have to cover is for the 2020 attempt only. And I will tell you what is not relevant for you as far as the June attempt students are concerned. So first let's start with the preamble. Now I'll tell you, this preamble has been asked in the exam. By the way, this is the Bare Act and this is the ebook. So don't worry. Life will be little easier while studying IBC. Okay. So just see why this is important. Because one common question which institute may ask you is why do we need IBC or why IBC was enacted? All those things. So if they ask you questions pertaining to why IBC, you will get the answer here because this is what? This is the preamble of the act, right? Now, what does the preamble say? The preamble says that this is an act to consolidate and amend the laws relating to the reorganization and insolvency resolution of the corporate person, partnership firm, and individuals in a time bound manner. So, as I said, Tariq pe Tariq, Tariq pe Tariq, that issue is it's trying to address these issues that the matter gets resolved quickly. Then, second is for the maximization of the value of the assets. So when we'll study SARFAESI, we'll realize that since banks were given the power to recover their money, they never bothered about the maximization of the value of the assets. Their focus was only on the recovery, which is commercially right from their perspective, but overall, it was not taking care of the other stakeholders. Therefore, maximization of the value of the assets of such person. Then to promote entrepreneurship, how promote entrepreneurship will get promoted? Because of the availability of credit and balance the interest of all the stakeholders, including alteration in the order of the payment of the government dues. Now, most of you have done your executive from old syllabus. So if you remember, there was one chapter called as liquidation of companies in accounts. And even in company law, you all must have studied, even if you are from the new syllabus executive, you must have studied that the government dues were preferential creditors. They were paid before. So again, now the changes have been made in terms of the government dues. So this is there altering the order of the priority of the government dues, and then at last to establish the regulator, which is Insolvency Bankruptcy Board of India. So just remember this same preamble, you need to write it this way. Why do you need the code? You need the code for these reasons, right? So as I said, this is an important question. Why do you need the code? This is nothing else. This is just the preamble of the law. Make sense? Guys, make sense? Just read this. Instead of writing full lengthy paragraphs, just write the preamble only. It will be always good. Apart from this, if you want to write the other provisions, that's good. But please mention these 7 points as far as the need of code is concerned. Okay. Let's see. This code is extended to whole of India. Jammu and Kashmir is also now included, right? Then enforcement can be different. Now, this is another important question for your exam, that the IBC is applicable to whom, right? So this is basically for the applicability. So this IBC covers any company which is incorporated under the Companies Act 2013 or any of the previous company law. Then any other company which is governed by a special act. So even that will be covered here. Limited liability partnership. Then such other body corporate as for the time being in force, central government may notify. Then you have the personal guarantor to the corporate debtor. Then you have the partnership firm, and then you have the individuals other than the person referred to in clause E. Now, if you just wonder why personal guarantor to the corporate debtor is given here and why individuals is given here, so I'll tell you what this entire thing means. As I said you that IBC has not been notified for the individuals, correct? I said you chapter 3 is not notified for the individuals and the partnership firm. So let's say there is a company ABC Limited, right? This ABC Limited has taken loan from the bank. So bank has given the loan to ABC Limited. ABC Limited has now defaulted the loan. Now when this loan was even given to ABC Limited, the promoter of ABC, let's say A, B and C, right? The promoter of ABC Limited had given the personal guarantee to the bank, stating that if ABC Limited defaults, they are going to make good that default. Now, do you understand? There is a company, there is a bank, and then there are promoters of the company, the borrowing company, who have given a personal guarantee. So when ABC Limited defaulted, bank initiated a corporate insolvency resolution process against the company. Bank also tried to do the same with the individuals, and these individuals said that no, you cannot initiate a IBC proceeding against us because we are individuals. Okay. And on individuals, IBC is still not applicable. So you can do whatever else you want, but you cannot invoke IBC. Now, technically, this was a lacuna in the law, which was again upheld. So they included this and they said that personal guarantor to the corporate debtor. Now, after the amendment, ABC, even though they are individuals, but still IBC proceedings can be initiated against them. So that's why I said for individuals, it is applicable, not completely notified. For in certain circumstances, it will be notified. So it will be notified when these individuals are personal guarantor to the corporate debtor. Therefore, we say that IBC will be applicable to them also. Now, ABC, though they are individual, but they are also a personal guarantor to the corporate debtor. Hence, they cannot escape from their liability, saying that the provisions for individuals are not applicable on us. Got it? And in future also, when IBC will be notified for individuals, at that point of time also, this provision will still be there because the process for personal guarantor to the corporate debtor will be different as compared to the individuals. Guys, is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Guys, is this clear?
Yes, sir.
ये पॉइंट समझ में आया आप लोगों को कि एक इंडिविजुअल जो पर्सनल गारंटी दे रहा है किसी कंपनी के लिए, बैंक को या फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन को, वो बाद में क्या करता है, वो जब बैंक इंसॉल्वेंसी प्रोसीडिंग स्टार्ट करता है तो वो इंडिविजुअल बोलता है कि मैं तो इंडिविजुअल हूँ, आप कंपनी के अगेंस्ट जो करना है करो, आप मेरे अगेंस्ट कुछ नहीं कर सकते। क्यों? क्योंकि मैं तो एक इंडिविजुअल हूँ और इंडिविजुअल तो एग्जेम्प्टेड है, अभी तक कवर नहीं है, उसके प्रोविजंस अभी तक नोटिफाई नहीं हुए। तो लॉ यहाँ पे इंटरवीन किया और उन्होंने लॉ को यहाँ पर अमेंड कर दिया। बाय द वे, आईबीसी में आपको बहुत सारे चेंजेस मिलेंगे and all these changes are because of some or the other event. So IBBI has been very proactive. Whenever they have seen a major lacuna in the law, they have either tapped it through a regulation or some rules, or they have amended the act only. तो इन लोगों ने एक्ट को अमेंड किया और यहाँ पे पर्सनल गारंटर टू द कॉर्पोरेट डेटर डाल दिया, इसका एक अपना अलग प्रोसेस बना दिया। तो इन फ्यूचर जब इंडिविजुअल्स के लिए प्रोविजन नोटिफाई भी हो जाएगा तो भी ये एज इट इज यहाँ पे रहेगा, क्योंकि पार्टली इसका जो प्रोविजन है वो एनसीएलटी में चलता है। इवन दो इंडिविजुअल्स के लिए केसेस द एडजुडिकेटिंग अथॉरिटी इज डीआरटी, बट फॉर द पर्सनल गारंटर टू कॉर्पोरेट डेटर एनसीएलटी विल आल्सो कम इनटू द पिक्चर। ये पॉइंट समझा आपको गाइस? क्लियर?
Yes, sir.
No,
ओके,
sir.
नहीं?
नहीं.
ओके, ये देखो, ये है इंसॉल्वेंसी बैंक्रप्सी कोड। ठीक है, आईबीसी के दो पार्ट्स है, मैंने आपको पहले भी बताया, वन इज फॉर कॉर्पोरेट पर्सन, अनदर इज फॉर इंडिविजुअल।
Individual firm.
हाँ, इंडिविजुअल एंड फॉर्म्स, बट फिलहाल मैं सिर्फ इंडिविजुअल के लिए रख रहा हूँ। ठीक है, आप मुझे बताओ, मिस्टर ए, मिस बी, मिस्टर सी, मिस डी, ये क्या है? ये इंडिविजुअल्स है।
Yes, sir.
ठीक है, ये चारों इंडिविजुअल्स है, लेकिन ये चारों प्रमोटर्स भी है। ठीक है, किसके? एक कंपनी के, विच इज नेम्ड एज ABCD लिमिटेड। अब हमें पता है कि आईबीसी इनके लिए तो नोटिफाई हो चुका है, इंडिविजुअल्स के लिए अभी तक नोटिफाई नहीं हुआ। नाउ ABC लिमिटेड हैज टेकन लोन फ्रॉम अ बैंक, और फिर इन्होंने क्या कर दिया, उस लोन का डिफॉल्ट कर दिया, पेमेंट नहीं किया। जब इन्होंने पेमेंट नहीं किया तो बैंक ने बोला हम कंपनी के अगेंस्ट जाएंगे और कंपनी के अगेंस्ट हम प्रोसीडिंग फाइल करेंगे इन आईबीसी। आया समझ में?
Yes, sir.
अच्छा, जब ABCD लिमिटेड को बैंक ने लोन दिया था, तो ये जो इंडिविजुअल्स है ABCD, ये चारों ने बैंक को क्या किया था, पर्सनल गारंटी दिया था। आप पर्सनल गारंटी समझते हो? गारंटी क्या होता है कि अगर कुछ खराब हुई तो मेरी जिम्मेदारी, करेक्ट?
Yes.
तो एबीसीडी ने बैंक को बोला कि अगर इस कंपनी ने डिफॉल्ट किया तो मेरी अपनी पर्सनल जिम्मेदारी। आप देखो, अनिल अंबानी के अगेंस्ट भी तो यही केस फाइल हुआ था। वो तीनों चाइनीज बैंक बोल रहे थे कि अनिल अंबानी ने पर्सनल गारंटी दिया था, तो अब वो कैसे मुकर सकते हैं? और अनिल अंबानी क्या बोल रहे कि मैंने कभी भी पर्सनल गारंटी नहीं दिया था, आपने जो लोन दिया वो कंपनी को दिया था, मैंने कभी भी पर्सनल गारंटी नहीं दिया था। ओके, सो यहाँ पर एबीसीडी ने पर्सनल गारंटी दे दिया बैंक को, और क्या बोला कि कल को अगर एबीसीडी लिमिटेड डिफॉल्ट करे तो हम लोग आपको उस लोन को, जो भी आपका अमाउंट होगा उसको हम लोग पे कर देंगे। ठीक है? और ऐसा होता है बहुत सारे कंपनीज में, जो प्रमोटर्स होते हैं वो पर्सनल गारंटी देते हैं। ठीक है?
हाँ सर।
ओके, अब आप देखो यहां पर क्या हुआ। जब एबीसीडी ने डिफॉल्ट किया, बैंक ने एबीसीडी प्राइवेट जो कंपनी है एबीसीडी लिमिटेड, इसके अगेंस्ट में सीआईआरपी इनिशिएट किया। ठीक है? कॉर्पोरेट पर्संस तो चल गया, कोई दिक्कत नहीं, क्योंकि इंडिविजुअल्स मतलब कॉर्पोरेट पर्सन के लिए तो आईबीसी वैसे ही नोटिफाई हो गया। बट जब ये बैंक ने ए बी सी डी इन इंडिविजुअल्स के अगेंस्ट प्रोसीड करने का ट्राई किया, तो ए बी सी डी क्या बोलते हैं, आप हमारे अगेंस्ट आईबीसी का केस कैसे चला सकते हो? तो बैंक ने बोला क्यों, आपने तो गारंटी दिया था ना कि एबीसीडी ने अगर डिफॉल्ट किया है तो आपके अगेंस्ट में मैं केस फाइल कर सकता हूँ, पैसे का रिकवरी कर सकता हूँ, आपने गारंटी दी है, सो एज गारंटर मैं आपके अगेंस्ट जाऊंगा। तो एबीसीडी ने बड़े स्मार्टली यहाँ पे लॉ का फायदा उठाया और क्या बोला, देखो ए, मिस्टर ए, लेट्स टेक एग्जांपल ऑफ ए ओनली। ए ने बोला मैं एक इंडिविजुअल हूँ, ठीक है, मैं एक इंडिविजुअल हूँ, तो आप मेरे अगेंस्ट अगर केस फाइल करोगे या प्रोसीडिंग्स कुछ भी स्टार्ट करोगे तो वो तो इंडिविजुअल वाला ही करोगे ना, वो तो अभी तक नोटिफाई नहीं हुआ है, सो यू कैन नॉट प्रोसीड अगेंस्ट मी अंडर आईबीसी। सिनेरियो समझा आपको?
हाँ सर।
जस्टिफिकेशन बराबर है, ए का भी बराबर है कि लॉ में तो कोई प्रोविजन होगा उसके अगेंस्ट ही आप जाओगे ना, उसी के हिसाब से आप जाओगे, बिना प्रोविजन के तो आप मेरे पास आओगे नहीं। तो इस तरह से केसेस हुए और ये जो ए है ये बेचारा बचता गया। फिर आईबीबीआई ने लॉ के अंदर अमेंड किया और बोला कि देखो, अगर आप एक इंडिविजुअल हो, अगर आप एक इंडिविजुअल हो, इसके साथ में आप पर्सनल गारंटर भी हो फॉर अ कॉर्पोरेट डेटर, अगर आप ये भी हो तो आप पार्ट 3 के अंदर भी कवर्ड होगे, प्लस आप पार्ट 4 में भी कवर्ड होगे। लेकिन अगर आप पर्सनल गारंटर टू कॉर्पोरेट डेटर नहीं हो तो आप थर्ड पार्ट में नहीं हो, आप सिर्फ फोर्थ पार्ट में कवर्ड रहोगे। अब प्रोसीडिंग समझ में आया आपको?
हाँ सर।
तो इंडिविजुअल को अब दो श्रेणी में ट्रांसफर कर दिया, वन इज ओनली प्लेन वनीला इंडिविजुअल, another is personal guarantor to corporate debtor as well. So if you are personal guarantor to corporate debtor तो आपके लिए आईबीसी एप्लीकेबल है। मेक सेंस?
Yes sir.
ओके, एनीवन एल्स, एनी डाउट टिल नाउ? एनी डाउट टिल नाउ? नो?
No, sir.
ओके, अब ये जो पर्सनल गारंटी टू कॉर्पोरेट डेटर है, इनके लिए भी रूल्स जो थे, रेगुलेशंस, वो नोटिफाई हुए in 15th November 2019. The rules were got notified, so we'll see that. So this is with effect from 15th November 2019. Okay, now let's see, there are definitions. So a lot of definitions are same, but there are certain definitions which I want you all to read. Right, one is the definition of the claim. So claim means a right to payment, whether or not such right is reduced to a judgment, fixed, disputed, undisputed, लीगल, इक्विटेबल, सिक्योर्ड, अनसिक्योर्ड। तो ये एक आपके पास क्लेम का डेफिनेशन है। देन राइट टू रेमेडी फॉर ब्रीच ऑफ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट, इवन दैट इज आल्सो अ क्लेम। देन यू हैव अ डेफिनेशन of a corporate person. So who is there in the corporate person? So person means a company, then a limited liability partnership. So you have company, you have limited liability partnership, and then such other person which is incorporated with limited liability, but then it does not include any financial service provider. So if you are a financial service provider and you are also a company, are you a corporate person? A financial service provider who is a company, can you say that financial service provider is a corporate person?
No, sir.
No,
Answer is
sir.
no. Okay. Then you have the definition of corporate debtor. So corporate debtor means a corporate person to whom a debt to who owes a debt to any person. Now, when I say to any person, so not necessary corporate person, it could be any person, even individuals. Okay. So corporate debtor means a corporate person who owes a debt to any financial to any person here. Then you have a definition of creditor. So if you remember while studying section 230, we had discussed that the power to enter into compromise or arrangement by the company and its creditor. Remember?
Yes, sir.
So creditor, I had said here that under IBC, the creditors are bifurcated into two parts. One is called as the financial creditor, another is the operational creditor. But otherwise, what is creditor defined? So creditor is defined any person to whom the debt is owed. So if I have to pay you some money, you are basically I'm your creditor. If I have to pay you, you are the creditor. If I have to receive, you are the creditor. So
Sir,
yes.
if salary not paid to the employee,
So tell me, will it be a
wo-
creditor?
yes, sir.
Because if you see the definition of debt, so a person to whom a debt is owed. So debt means a liability or an obligation in respect of a claim which is due from any person, and it includes a financial debt and operational debt. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
All right. Then you have a default. So just see, default means non-payment of a debt when whole or any part of the installment of the amount of debt has become due and payable and is not paid by the debtor or by the corporate debtor, as the case may be. Do you understand? Just see the definitions that we are studying right now. It belongs to part 1. Okay. It belongs the definition from chapter 1. So these definitions are applicable to the entire law. ये बच्चा लोग समझा? The provisions of this code shall apply to this. Sorry. Just see this. In this code means entire IBC. हम आगे फिर से section 5 पढ़ेंगे where there will be definitions, but that definitions is only for chapter 2. That is for the corporate person. आया समझ में?
Yes, sir.
Right? So don't get confused. That's a we just now read a definition and again we have a definition section. So the definition section of chapter 3 is applicable to the entire code. And then in addition to chapter 3, you have a definition section 5, which is applicable only for the CIRP and liquidation of the corporate person. Okay. Anyway, let's see. So there is a default. So if there is a default, so that's the reason they have written here debtor or corporate debtor. As the case may be. Then you have another information which I will. So who is a financial service provider? Because if you are a financial service provider, you are not a corporate person. Just see financial service provider means a person who are providing the financial services. Now financial services, and you should also be registered with the financial sector regulator. So what are the financial services which you can provide? So the word financial services is also defined. So if you see financial services like accepting of deposit, safeguarding and administrating of the assets for the financial products, like insurance and all, affecting the contracts of insurance, offering and managing or agreeing to manage assets, rendering and agreeing to. ये definition आपको याद नहीं रखना. You don't have to remember this definition, but just keep in your mind that if you are falling into these categories, then you are a financial service provider, and then IBC will not be applicable to you. You are not a corporate person. For you guys, for financial service provider, you have a separate provisions which is notified, not here. Okay. Then you have financial sector regulator here. So like SEBI, IRDAI or PFRDA. So all these regulators are there. Then you have insolvency professional. Now just understand who is an insolvency professional. So insolvency professional means a person who is enrolled under section 206 with insolvency professional agency as its member and is also registered with the board. Now what is this board? The board is IBBI as an insolvency professional. So if you remember when I was discussing about the four pillars of IBC, right, apart from the adjudicating authority, I mentioned you about IP. So this is that IP. So IP is registered with, sorry, IP is registered with IBBI, and then also is the IP is a member of insolvency professional agency. Does this make sense? Does this make sense? Means a
Yes.
person who is enrolled with an insolvency professional agency as its member, and then you're also registered with the board as insolvency professional. Now you'll keep on reading the word insolvency professional, resolution professional, insolvency resolution professional. So what does this mean? Liquidator. Just understand what I'm trying to say. So take for example, let's say this is Mansi, right? Mansi, you're forever our case study. Okay, for this batch. So this is Mansi. Mansi is a member with IPA, and Mansi is also registered with IBBI. So what are we going to call Mansi if both are
Insolvency
compliant?
professional.
Yes. So Mansi is a insolvency professional. Okay. Now, when she will be named as a interim resolution professional. Okay. When she will be named as an interim resolution professional, when the application is filed by the creditor or by the corporate debtor, then we will say Mansi is interim resolution professional for a particular company. Okay. For that particular company. So IP, she is forever, right? But she is IRP, let's say, for company A. So if I say Mansi is IRP for company A, this means the creditor or the company A itself, they have filed the CIRP application to NCLT and they have named Mansi as their interim resolution professional. Okay. Does this make sense?
Yes, sir.
Then you have the next step where Mansi will be called as the resolution professional. So quite possible she is interim resolution professional for company A. She is resolution professional for company B. Now when I say she is a resolution professional, which means what? The committee of creditors is formed. Okay. So once the application is filed to NCLT, then the committee of creditor is formed and all those creditors decide whether we should keep this interim resolution professional as the resolution professional or we should replace. So in company A, what is going to happen? In company A, once the committee of creditors is formed, at that point of time, they will decide should Mansi continue or we should replace Mansi with some other insolvency professional. Okay. So if Mansi is being approved as a resolution professional, then from IRP, she will become RP of the same company. Do you get it? Guys, do you get it? So what would have happened in company B? So in company B, either Mansi was the IRP and now she is being approved as RP, or some other person was the IRP of company B and now that person has been replaced and Mansi has been appointed as the RP. Got it? Guys, got it?
Yes.
सर
Sir,
No?
मतलब
Huh. Yeah, Mansi.
सर मतलब मुझे आरपी के लिए सबसे पहले आई आरपी होना पड़ेगा।
तो या तो आप IRP थे और आपको RP बना दिया गया, या फिर कोई और आईआरपी था और कमिटी ऑफ क्रेडिटर को लगा कि नहीं, इस आईआरपी को रिप्लेस करो और नए आरपी को अपॉइंट करो, तो आपको, तो क्वाइट पॉसिबल कंपनी बी में आप ही आईआरपी थे, राइट? सो देखो कंपनी बी में दो सिचुएशन हो सकता है अगर आप आरपी थे तो, सो आइदर यू वर ओनली द आईआरपी एंड नाउ यू आर मेड एज द आरपी, or you have replaced the IRP and you are now appointed as the RP. Quite possible I was the IRP. जब क्रेडिटर ने एप्लीकेशन फाइल किया था कंपनी बी में, तो कंपनी बी के क्रेडिटर ने एप्लीकेशन में मेरा नाम दिया था. They said that Anand Kankani is the interim resolution professional for this company. Now, when the committee of creditors was formed, they said that no, we don't trust Anand, right? We don't think he will be able to handle the entire process. We want some other professional, insolvency professional to be appointed as the RP. So let's approve Mansi instead of Anand. Got it?
हाँ हाँ सर।
Yeah, yeah, समझ में? So how do you
यस सर।
become IRP? Because your name was proposed. This was proposed. Okay. Then you become IRP. Now thereafter, you will only become the liquidator. So if I say you are the liquidator of company C, then what are the two scenarios which is possible? Either you have replaced the RP, okay? Either you have replaced the RP or you were the RP of this company and company C's liquidation process, I mean the resolution process was not successful and now the company is into liquidation, okay?
यस सर।
So you are appointed after the resolution process, that is the CIRP, it got failed. Okay, is this clear?
सर जो आरपी होगा उसको ही आगे यदि लिक्विडेट होती है तो उसको ही लिक्विडेटर बनेगा वो, मतलब
Not
जरूरी
always,
नहीं है।
not always, not always.
ओके सर।
अगर आरपी के इनएफिशिएंसी की वजह से रेजोल्यूशन नहीं हो पाया तो एनसीएलटी आरपी को रिप्लेस कर देगा.
ओके सर।
ओके
और सर,
हम्म
सर जैसे कोई एक आरपी है तो वो दो कंपनियों का रिजोल्यूशन वो कर सकता है,
तो अगर
जैसे
आप यहाँ पे
आरपी है।
चेक करो, अगर आप यहाँ पे चेक करो तो मानसी अकेले कंपनी ए की आईआरपी है, कंपनी बी की आरपी है और कंपनी सी की लिक्विडेटर है, तो ऑफ कोर्स
उस-
इट इज पॉसिबल.
नहीं, और सिर्फ आरपी, यदि आरपी की बात कर रही हूँ मैं,
हाँ आराम
रिजोल्यूशन
से आप तब आरपी भी बन सकते हो.
बोथ कंपनी, जैसे
यस
कंपनी ए और कंपनी बी
यस
दो।
यस यस
ओके सर।
यस.
Just like chartered accountant
So
and
same like you are a company
okay.
secretary. So you are a
Yes, sir.
IP, you are a company secretary. Then you are a secretarial auditor for company A. You are internal auditor for company B. Got it? You are consultant for company C. Possible?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Same thing. Okay. Of course, then you cannot be secretarial auditor for 500 companies. There will be limit to that also. So same way you cannot be RP for n number of companies. There will be limit to that. So just remember this part. Then we have insolvency professional agency. So as I said, IPA will be discussing later. Then, so right now you understand company secretary and ICSI. So same thing. Okay, just for understanding. Then you have the next definition, which is important. One is the secured creditor. So who is a secured creditor? Secured creditor means a creditor in the favor of whom any security interest is created. Now, what do you mean by security interest? So, any charge, title, claim against the property which has been created for the secured creditor. That, let's say, the secured creditor, you are a secured creditor if you have a charge over a particular asset. If a hypothecation is created on the stock, on the uh, whatever asset which is there, right? If you have created that, which means that if you default, I can take hold of that asset, I can dispose of that asset at my ease and recover my dues. So you are a secured interest, right? Security interest is there. Now, performance guarantee cannot be the security interest. Thereafter, if you see, you have chapter number 4. Now again, I'll go ahead with the definition. So I said your definitions will come twice. So again, this is chapter number part 2, which is for the insolvency resolution and liquidation of corporate person. Part 1 is preliminary. So just see, this part shall apply relating to the insolvency and corporate person, corporate insolvency and liquidation of corporate debtor, where the minimum amount of default is what? This is 1 lakh rupees. So at present, this amount is what? At present, this amount is 1 crore. Okay. In the act, it is still written 1 lakh rupees. Okay. But 1 crore rupees is there. You have a notification with respect to this, and this happened because of COVID. Okay. And here they say that provided the central government may by notification specify minimum amount of default, higher which shall not be more than 1 crore rupees. So right now government has changed this 1 lakh rupees and they have made it what? They have made it 1 crore. Now this pre-packaged insolvency, I'm not touching it right now because this is part of the newest amendment to the IBC, which will cover at the end of IBC, right? Now there are certain definitions which I need to cover. So part 2 has a definition of adjudicating authority. And here the adjudicating authority means the National Company Law Tribunal. Okay. Same way, when you will study part 3, in their definition section, you are going to find adjudicating authority, which will be what? Debt
Dear.
recovery tribunal. Okay. This is there. Then you have a corporate applicant. So what do you mean by corporate applicant? So corporate applicant means a corporate debtor or a member or a partner of the corporate debtor. So how can you have a partner of a corporate debtor? Because corporate debtor also includes LLP. Okay, so this is in case of company. So the member of the company or the partner of the company who is now authorized to make the application for CIRP. So that's the corporate applicant. Then you have an individual who is in charge of the managing of the operations of the corporate debtor. Any person who has got the supervision or control over the financial affairs of the corporate debtor. So that person is corporate applicant. Now, why corporate applicant is important? Because we'll see the application is filed by the financial creditor, or it is filed by the operational creditor, or it is filed by the corporate applicant. So these are the three persons who can file the application for CIRP. Then you have a corporate guarantor. So like A, B, C, we saw personal guarantor who are individuals. You will also find the corporate guarantors. So one company giving guarantee for the other company. Then you have a definition of dispute. So dispute means it includes. So first of all, just understand dispute is an inclusive definition. So dispute includes a suit or arbitration proceeding relating to the existence of the amount of debt, quality of goods or services, breach of representation or warranty. So it could be due to anything. Let's say I say the amount is 5 crore rupees and the other person is saying no, the amount of debt is only 4 crore because the other person has to pay. So here it is. Quality of goods. Let's say I said that I wanted basmati rice versus what you have supplied is, let's say, a non-basmati rice. Right, just an example I am giving you. Breach of representation and warranty. So you gave an representation that, or let's say that it is going to do, uh, let's say cooling. So it is going to cool in, let's say, in 30 minutes, the fridge is going to make the ice ready. But it's been 45 minutes, the ICE is not ready. So this is again breach of representation or warranty. Do you see those ads? Cooling within 30 days, fast cooling, fast forward cooling. Nowadays you have that Voltas ad, 30 days, your vegetables are going to remain fresh. Okay. So that's where. So all these will come into dispute. Then you have a
Sir,
financial, yes.
a suit or arbitration proceeding means in this context?
So suit or arbitration proceeding would be if it is, so suit is when a case has been filed, and arbitration proceeding when the matter is with resolved or is pending in the arbitration room.
यदि वो डिस्प्यूट को हमने कहीं पे लेके जाए तो फिर वापस हम यहाँ पे भी ला सकते हैं आईबीसी के अंदर.
सो आगे हम पढ़ेंगे कि ये डिस्प्यूट कोर्ट में जाने का भी जरूरत नहीं है. सो इवन इफ अगर आपका डिस्प्यूट पेंडिंग नहीं है किसी कोर्ट में या किसी आर्बिट्रेशन प्रोसीडिंग में, और अगर वो डिस्प्यूटेड है तो भी उसको वैलिड डिस्प्यूट माना जाएगा. सो डेफिनेशन को देख के ऐसा जरूर लगता है कि कहीं ना कहीं किसी कोर्ट में या आर्बिट्रेशन के अंदर आपका मैटर पेंडिंग होना चाहिए, बट ऐसा जरूरी नहीं है बिकॉज ये इंक्लूसिव डेफिनेशन है. तो सपोज आपने मेरे को प्रॉमिस किया था दैट यू आर गोइंग टू सप्लाई बासमती राइस टू मी, और आपने मुझे नॉन बासमती राइस सप्लाई कर दिया, और अब मैं आपको पेमेंट देने से मना कर रहा हूँ, एंड आई एम सेइंग दैट I said you for basmati rice I will pay you 200 rupees kg, but the one that you have supplied uska market price is only 80 kg. So I'll not give you 200 rupees, I'll give you 70 rupees only. Do you understand this case?
यस सर.
तो अभी यहाँ पे आपके और मेरे बीच में क्या हो जाएगा, डिस्प्यूट हो जाएगा.
यस सर.
राइट. ऐसा भी हो सकता है कि आपने बासमती सप्लाई किया लेकिन आपको मैंने बोला था 100 kg सप्लाई करना, आपने 90 kg सप्लाई किया.
क्वांटिटी.
क्वांटिटी कुड बी ड्यू टू एनीथिंग. तो ये
ओके.
डिस्प्यूट हो गया. तो डिस्प्यूट किस किस चीजों के लिए हो सकता है, एग्जिस्टेंस ऑफ द अमाउंट, क्वालिटी ऑफ गुड्स और सर्विसेज, और ब्रीच ऑफ रिप्रेजेंटेशन एंड वारंटी. तो लास्ट वाला रिप्रेजेंटेशन एंड वारंटी में आ जाएगा. यू सेड
यस.
100 kg but it is only 90 kg.
यस.
Right. Now they you have financial creditor. So financial creditor means any person to whom the financial debt is owed and includes a person to whom the financial debt has been legally assigned. So ऐसा कोई भी इंसान जिसको फाइनेंशियल डेट है. अभी फाइनेंशियल डेट का बेसिक मीनिंग आप समझ लो, डिटेल्ड वन विल कवर इन द नेक्स्ट लेक्चर. बट फाइनेंशियल डेट जस्ट अंडरस्टैंड when the money has been disbursed for time value of money, just understand interest. Okay, so if I have given you the money and the objective of giving you the money was that you will repay me the money along with interest, it's a financial debt, and because of that I am a financial creditor. Got it?
ओके सर.
Right. Then you have information memorandum. We'll see this later on. Initiation date is when the application is made to the NCLT. So that is the initiation date. And when this application is being accepted, that is the insolvency commencement date. Right. So this is another definition. Then insolvency resolution process period. Now, once the application is being admitted by NCLT, you all will be given 180 days time period. So within 180 days time period, the insolvency should be resolved. If it is not resolved and the committee of creditors agree, then there can be an extension for another 90 days. So if 180 plus the extension of 90 days, the insolvency is not resolved, then in that case, the company will be liquidated. And then the process of section 33 will start. Okay. So that's why this period is important. Now there is another word called as interim finance. So what does interim finance means? If let's say the insolvency resolution period is going on, and in between the insolvency professional feels that we need money to run the business, so that's where the interim finance will be raised. Then you have liquidation commencement date. So it could be either under section 33 or it could be under section 59. Now see the definition of liquidator. So liquidator means an insolvency professional who is appointed as liquidator, okay, in chapter 3 or chapter 5 of this part. Then you have operational creditor. So any person to whom the operational debt is owed is an operational creditor. An operational creditor means a respect, it means a claim in respect of the provisions of goods and services, Mansi, including the employment. Okay. So what you had
Yes, sir.
said that the outstanding salaries, so that will be under the head of operational debt. Then you have a personal guarantor. Now can you see personal guarantor means a individual who is surety to a contract of corporate debtor. Then we have some definitions with respect to pre-packaged insolvency resolution process. Related party and all will cover it later when we do regulation 29A. Then you have a resolution applicant. So who is a resolution applicant? So a resolution applicant means a person who is either individually or jointly files, right? Oh, sorry, resolution applicant is basically a person who submits the resolution plan. So to revive or to resolve the insolvency, plans are invited and there is one person who submits the resolution plan that I have a plan. How can I resolve the insolvency? So this is the person who is called as resolution applicant. Then you have a resolution plan which is again proposed by the resolution applicant, and you have this resolution professional. So for the purpose of this part, insolvency professional who is appointed to conduct the corporate insolvency resolution process, and it includes the interim resolution professional. So the interim resolution professional, so as I said, for company B, either Mansi was the IRP and now she is being appointed as RP, or she has replaced some other IRP and now she is being appointed as the RP. Okay, is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if you see how the chart is going to be and how the entire process is going to be, so just see, first of all, there will be a default which will be committed. Okay, then as soon as the default is committed, the application will be made to NCLT. Now this application to NCLT will be made by either financial creditor or operational creditor or the corporate debtor. Then NCLT may either reject the application or NCLT may accept the application. Once NCLT accepts the application, that is the date of commencement of CIRP. Public announcement will be made, right? And a moratorium period will start. Now, what is moratorium? During this period, no cases and all will be filed against the company. Thereafter, the interim resolution professional will be formed, right? Will be basically the interim resolution professional will form the committee of creditor. In that first meeting of committee of creditor, the interim resolution professional will be appointed as the RP or that person will be replaced. Then the resolution professional will take charge of the company and he'll prepare an information memorandum. What is information memorandum? It means to invite the resolution plan, right? To invite the resolution plan. So there is a insolvency situation which needs to be resolved. So what is the situation right now? How many debts are there? How many employees are there? What is the business? So we'll provide. So basically you can understand it's like an invitation to the offer which will be prepared. And based on that, the resolution plan will be offered. Okay. So the information memorandum is the invitation to offer and the resolution plan is the offer. That offer will be made to the resolution professional by some resolution applicant who would say that I'm interested in this company. I can resolve the insolvency of this company. Let me take charge of this company. Resolution professional will take this to the committee of creditors and is going to ask whether the committee of creditors are okay with this resolution plan or not. And if they are okay, then in that case, if the committee of creditors approve it by 66% of the majority, then this resolution plan will be forwarded to then this will be forwarded to NCLT, and thereafter if NCLT deems fit, NCLT is going to approve the resolution plan and then the company is going to proceed with the resolution plan, and if they reject, it will result in liquidation of the corporate debtor. Got it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Guys, got it? So this is going to be the provision, and tomorrow we will start with section number 6, 7, 8, 9 will continue tomorrow. Okay,
Yes, sir.
Okay,
all
sir.
right,
Sir,
that's it for today's lecture. Yes.
sir, अगर रिजोल्यूशन प्लान सक्सेसफुल नहीं होता है तो लिक्विडेशन होता है कंपनी का,
Mm-hmm.
तो सर वो रिजोल्यूशन प्लान में रिकवरी के बारे में होता है।
So law does not uses the word recovery. Law uses the word for resolution, resolving. होता कुछ नहीं
ओके।
है. It's a kind of recovery only, but it's not a proper recovery tool. We don't just say वसूली नहीं कर रहे कि मेरा पैसा मुझे मिल गया खत्म. We ensure that the company also continues. SARFAESI is a recovery tool because there you say, I need my money. After that, if the company gets liquidated, I am not interested in that. But IBC says that let's try to revive the company and not shut down the company. Okay.
यस सर।
मतलब कंपनी को रन करने के लिए सोचते हैं और उसमें ये होता है कि वो रिकवरी करते हैं सार्फेजी एक्ट में।
SARFAESI में bank is not concerned with whether the company will remain going concern or not. Bank is only
ओके
concerned with their money,
मनी, ओके सर।
right? IBC is not like that. IBC looks after the company. They say that let's try to revive this company instead of just shutting off. But if there is no way this company can be revived or the resolution cannot be made, then let's shut down this company.
ओके
Okay.
सर।
So that's it for today's lecture then. Take care. Bye bye.